What's going on, everybody? Aaron Smith here for Forward Gettysburg, and I have an absolute treat for you guys. I am here at the entrance of the mine shaft that was utilized by Union troops to place 4 tons of gunpowder underneath the Confederate lines and set off the catalyst, quite literally, for the Battle of the Crater. This is such a cool place to be. When I was coming down over this hill and I saw this little depression in the ground going into a wonderfully preserved or recreated mine shaft, I'm not 100% sure, I said a bunch of words to myself that I can't repeat on YouTube. What an absolute treat to be here. So here we are at Petersburg, a few dozen miles outside of Richmond, Virginia. The year's 1864. It's starting to become late July. Grant's Overland Campaign has turned into this campaign around Petersburg, the siege of Petersburg, if you will, that has seen nothing but fortifications and entrenchments on both sides. Needless to say, it's a bit of a stalemate at this point. One man, Lieutenant Colonel Henry Pleasants of the 48th Pennsylvania, a man from Pottsville, a wonderful little town. If you make your way to Pottsville, make sure you check out the Yuengling Brewery tour. Worth your time. Chef's kiss. He's a man from Pottsville. He has a deep and strong mining background. He proposes a plan. He's going to dig underneath the Confederate lines, some 456 feet, and they're going to place a lot of black powder, 4 tons of black powder, mind you. Now this is going to take some time. This is going to take the men about a month to dig this tunnel underneath the Confederate lines. Even though the men aren't digging very far or digging very deep, it's going to be a fairly time-consuming process. In order to not draw suspicion to the enemy, they're going to take out loads of dirt and stone using cracker boxes. You can imagine how long this is going to take. The tunnel itself is going to be rather intricate. There's going to be a little ventilation system in there for the men. It's going to be quite the tunnel. And at the end is a chamber where 4 tons of black powder are going to be placed. On the morning of July 30th, the fuse is going to be lit. 10 minutes will go by, 20 minutes will go by, 30 minutes will go by, and there's nothing. A few brave souls will crawl into the mine shaft behind me and relight the fuse. They'll come out, they'll tell Lieutenant Colonel Henry Pleasants, any moment now. Now you see, the plan for the crater was daring, to say the least. It was bold, perhaps one of the boldest actions by the Union Army up to this point. In fact, when news reached Meade that the men had finished digging the tunnel, he was rather surprised that they were able to accomplish that. The plan was to send in General Ferrero's 4th Division of Burnside's Corps. The 4th Division was comprised primarily of men from the United States Colored Troops, and these men trained every single day for this operation. See, they knew there was going to be a large crater in the ground. They knew that if they went into that crater, it was going to be like shooting fish in a barrel for the Confederates. So the men trained to go around the edge of the crater, create a hole, take advantage of the chaos in the Confederate line. Once they secure that portion, then the rest of Burnside's corps will be able to push through. However, at the last possible minute, it was decided that it would be a national fiasco to send in these troops. See, the prevailing thought at the time was that these freed black men fighting for the North were good for little more than rear guard duty. They were good for manual labor. They were good for digging and building trenches. But these men, in the eyes of their white counterparts, shouldn't have the glory of frontline combat. So at the last minute, those African American soldiers who had trained for countless hours at this point for this operation are going to be replaced by white Union soldiers. These Union soldiers, they didn't have the training that the United States Colored Troops had to go around the crater. And as we see, their mistakes and follies will turn into a terrible, terrible loss of life here at Petersburg. At approximately 4:45 a.m., an enormous explosion will rumble the earth and throw up dirt from this spot directly behind me. In the initial blast, some 273 Confederates will die. Burnside's 9th Corps will charge their way towards the broken Confederate works. However, as I alluded to earlier, rather than going around the crater, they will delve into the crater. The crater itself was some 170 feet by 100 feet and 30 feet deep. It will become a tomb for these Union men. William Mahone's Confederates will countercharge, and there will be terrible, terrible fighting throughout the entire day here. Some men in the crater taking sustained fire for 5, 6, 7 hours straight. Ferrero's 4th Division, those United States colored troops, they will eventually charge here at this area. Many of them would be captured. Some of them would be the victims of battlefield executions by the Confederates, either on the spot or they would be lulled into a false sense of security, taken behind the line initially as prisoners and executed there out of sight. I absolutely cannot imagine the horror here on July 30th, 1864. If you guys have seen the movie Cold Mountain, the Civil War battle scene in that movie is the crater. This has been on my Civil War bucket list for quite some time. And despite the warnings and hesitations by some of my friends who like to travel, the crater is overrated. It's a hole in the ground. Guys, to be here, to see it, to see the aftermath and the after effects some 160 years later from one of the craziest schemes of the American Civil War is, I am just ecstatic right now. I am so pleased and happy to be here and witness this. At the end of the fighting here at the crater, some 4,000 Union men will be casualties, some 1,500 Confederates. Not only that, but the scars to the landscape still last here to this very day. This is such a neat park, guys. If you get out to Virginia, make sure you check out Petersburg. It was one of the longest campaigns of the American Civil War, some 11 months. You think about the bloody horror of Spotsylvania and you realize that Petersburg went on for another 11 months. The war went on for another 11 months until Robert E. Lee surrendered to Grant. As always, this is Aaron Smith for Forward Gettysburg. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, make sure you like it and maybe leave me a comment down below. As always, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and ring that bell for notifications when I upload new videos. Thank you guys again so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next one.